57 people got killed in a train accident 2 weeks ago in Greece. Dozens were injured. The direct cause of this tragedy may have been human error. But the Greek train network has suffered from years of underinvestment and neglect. Since the accident, hundreds of thousands of demonstrators have hit the streets to voice their anger. There is a sense that this is about much more than the train accident. To discuss these issues with me are MEP Petros Kokkalis and Stelios Kouloglou. Welcome, thanks. So how is the mood these days in Greece? How do people feel about what happened, and what do the demonstrators demand from the Greek government? Maybe you first.
Well, the people are very angry. Very angry because this accident is not like a natural disaster. It's something made from human being, from human errors. Of course, there was also the underdevelopment of the train network in Greece, but also it was the fault of the present government because they hate public services. And so they reduced the personnel. There was no safety personnel, and that's how it happened. Because of political clientelism, the chief station was a guy who belonged to the governing party, but he was inexperienced. He has been appointed against the law. So there are a lot of things. I mean, the government, the government is hiring policemen. I mean, they have hired 1,500 policemen for the universities. And they are reducing the number of doctors. They are reducing the number of safety personnel in the trains. That's why people are very, very angry. And there is something more profound that's going on into the Greek society, and we can speak later about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So during the demonstrations, what are the demands of the people? What do they want?
Well, I think it's important to note that this was not any 57 people. This was 57 people with a median age of 24 years old. This was a train that is very popular with students riding on the single railway line that we have in Greece, and we managed to have two trains crash to each other. It was full of students going back to the university. It was the cream of their generation, a generation that has grown up, never seen any kind of prosperity or a properly running country. A generation that grew up during the crisis, during the Troika, a generation that has a certainty that their future will be worse than their parents, a generation which is also, of course, facing the climate crisis, and a generation which really went down in the streets in a very, very massive movement which demands justice and a clear answer of who was responsible for the death of their fellow youngsters, and a change, a systemic change in the way that the country is run, a systemic change which takes into account that their lives matter.
You already mentioned the Troika and the crisis. These young people, when you say average age 24, for them, it was not like they didn't really notice what was going on, but like you say, now they have to live with the consequences of the catastrophic policies of the Troika that forced Greece to privatize and to sell the whole infrastructure, like ports, electricity, railway, we heard it, everything, telecommunications, postal services.
Now they introduced a new law just some weeks before the general elections for the privatization of water.
The privatization of water?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, with the privatization of the trains, has been a decline in the quality and the safety standards, But this is part of the train network belongs to the private company, an Italian company. Private, and part of it belongs to the state. But the
So there's a
government,
separation between the operational and the railway belongs
Yes.
to Greece, and the trains, in fact, belong to
and the services
Italian
like
state company.
issuing tickets, etc., belongs to the Italians. But they were both going down. They were both lost during this government. They both lost their standards. You know, a lot of things. There were a lot of warnings. This is another reason for the people are so angry, because there were a lot of even 1 month, some weeks before the trade unions working the trade. They were saying, look, the accident is coming. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And the minister would go to the parliament to ask a parliamentary question, and would answer. He answered actually, shame on you. You have to take back your question about the safety of the train. This guy who belongs to the Karamanlis dynasty, etc., he wants to present himself again in the coming election. And this is another reason for the anger of the people, and especially the young people, as Petros has said. So there are plenty of reasons, you know. There was a bad relation, unhealthy relation between the government and the private sector. The private sector has, according to an agreement, has to modernize the system of safety, the whole network, and for 700 million euros to invest. And the government said, okay, you invest that, and what I have to do is just to introduce the safety mechanism. And at the end, they made a new agreement, and it was given to the private company not to invest money, and the government not to install the security system, you know. So there was a kind of, there was a deal. It looks like it was a secret deal under the table. So it's another reason.
So why is it that this government is pursuing a path of privatization and selling out public infrastructure? Who benefits from that?
Well, obviously, this is a part of their ideological baggage. They do not believe in any kind of public service, and they have introduced what is called a strategic state model, where they have pulled up a lot of authority directly into the hands of the Prime Minister and to his own personal group, devolving authority from the ministers and removing a lot of checks and balances, having a strong allergic reaction to any kind of public consultation, bringing laws such as the one about privatizing the water with 3 days of public consultation. And all that removal of checks and balances have resulted into a sort of an autocratic government with a single person, the Prime Minister, who in the end of the day says that he didn't know. He didn't know about, he didn't know nothing about wiretapping and the violation of human rights. He didn't know anything about pushbacks. He didn't know anything about corruption. He didn't know anything about the situation of the railway. He never seems to know anything, but everything is, all power devolves from his own office. So this is obviously a system of extreme neoliberalism, post-neoliberals, I would say, almost an alt-right government, which fails to see that in these very difficult times ahead, where we have to restore not only trust of citizens to the political system, but also the feeling of security, of safety, and for the young people again, a feeling of hope and future. We need to be able to do that in an open, transparent, and rules-based manner. This is not happening in Greece, so people and young people are very angry at this systemic failure of checks and balances and of a functioning liberal democracy.
So you are both members of the European Parliament, so you have also a broader perspective than just the national one. Can you tell us about other ways where countries did refuse to liberalize or to privatize? Because liberalization is the goal of the internal market. It's kind of the rule of the European Union to liberalize public services. However, some countries still have a functioning railway sector. They do not privatize everything. What would you say? Is there leeway to act differently than the Greek government does right now?
Well, I think there is an imperative to act differently. There is a very strong pushback to the idea of a full liberalization, of the removal of politics from the scene, of the collapse of the dogma that the invisible hand of the market should be left alone to deal with anything and it will do a better job than the government. A full realization that against very existential and transborder global challenges, the government needs to step in and guide the market, protect the citizens, set the regulations and enforce the regulations. So we are living, we have a murderous flashback to a Thatcherite policy, which in the 21st century and its complexity proves murderous.
We have a government that in only one sector, they are in favor of privatizing everything. If the Prime Minister's mother was alive, he would privatize her here, you know. I mean, he's so the only sector that Mr. Mitsotakis tried to keep a balance, it was in the spying on the opponents, you know, and the political personnel and on journalists. Then it was a balanced stuff, both by the state secret services and by the predator, by the private sector, you know. He outsourced some of the services to the private sector. He kept some in the state services, and sometimes they were doing both. They were both attacking the same person, as it happened with Androulakis, the MEP from the Socialist Party. He was both attacked by the secret services and the predator, you know. This is the only thing that he also doing that. Of course, he completely destroyed the secret service, whatever it remained of this. If not, the other thing he's doing all the time is he's in favor of it's an anachronic way of making Thatcher, you know. I mean, he reinvents Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher, you know, of 40 years ago. It's it's disgusting. It's a kind of political necrophilia, you know.
So if you could, like, Greece is in a way the worst example of what happens if public services are sold and privatized, because they say it brings you competition and lower prices and more choice, but in fact prices are rising, as we see now in the energy crisis. Food prices are rising, everything is rising, and the governments seem to have their hands cuffed. So what would you say, what does first Greece, but also Europe needs as an economic model to have strong public services, or what is the answer to the cost of living crisis that we are facing now, to the energy price crisis, to rising prices that make people suffer who cannot pay their bills anymore? What has to change? It's a very broad question. You can choose one aspect.
Listen, the only thing that we are discussing this, and we have to fight for, serious public services, is, it's something out. It makes me very angry, you know, because especially after the pandemic, when the importance of public services, public sector went again into light, because because most poor people, they could not afford private services. They would go to the public sector, and they have been protected by the public. And now we're again, because this is not a matter of ideology, it's a matter of interest, you know, because there are a lot of private interests. They don't want that the European Union change course. They don't want that the European Union understands the importance of public sector. in every. So we're still arguing about this. It makes me angry, but that's the reality, and we have to stand against it.
Well, for me, it's clear that Europe is fastly reverting to its roots post-World War II in a social welfare state, a state which runs on a social market, and it has to move away from its lockstep with the extremely neoliberal agenda that we followed since the 1980s and has led us to a series of fragilities in a series what is now called the polycrisis, and the realization that this system is not only unable to deal with future challenges, but is bringing us to consecutive crises, be that in the cost of living, be that in climate, be that in energy, be that in food security, be that in public health security. So the faster we realize that we need a better state and better regulation to protect our citizens from what we have created in the past few years, not only within the European Union, but also outside the borders as a development and as global climate change leaders, the better it is. So for our case in Greece, we want elections now, and we want to work and fight for a progressive government that will bring back these checks and balances.
Well, good luck. You have our full support in this fight in Greece, of course. Thank you very much for participating, for answering to my questions. Thanks you all for watching the show. Make sure you share this video if you like it or comment it. We are always curious to hear what you think, and enjoy, stay safe. Goodbye.